So we started working with MPS, which is Milwaukee Public Schools, about 4 or 5 years ago, when we started handling a certain class of case in the conferencing program, and that was the sale of marijuana. 17-year-olds are adults for jurisdiction purposes in Wisconsin, and it was just a little too hard to see 17-year-olds getting, hit with a felony for selling usually small amounts in school. And oftentimes the cases would get amended down, but sometimes they wouldn't. In any event, I asked then DA McCann if we could use the conferencing model, bringing together the victim, the offender, and community representatives to go through the same process with the sale of marijuana cases, with representatives from the school serving as the victim, because after all, their community was impacted. And got approval to make that change. So now we're dealing with a case that's, again, not an individual victim, but a communal victim. And the schools really appreciated the opportunity. And we didn't see a lot of cases like this, maybe 10 a year for 3 or 4 years. But that prompted a deeper conversation about restorative practices within the Milwaukee Public School system. And through the leadership of a school board member and several other staff people, in the central administration, we started looking at ways to engage in a very active formal collaboration, so that there are now 2 community prosecutors assigned to working with MPS for the sole purpose of helping bring restorative practices into the schools. And in my role, I'm one of the 2, and my role is to work mostly with high schools. We know, for example, that if a student is suspended in middle school once, they're 3 times more likely to be a high school dropout. And then I don't know the number off the top of my head, but we know that high school dropouts certainly populate the criminal justice system far more than non-high school dropouts. So do the math. This is something that school systems should be developing. Now, the fact that it's being developed here in Milwaukee in conjunction with the DA's office is just because we've developed some expertise over the years. It doesn't have to be, but clearly it's a nice relationship as well. It's an interesting relationship for the school system to bring in the DA's office. I don't know of anything else that has that. There are lots of opportunities, there are lots of examples of school resource officers, police officers spending time in schools. And that, what's interesting about that as an approach is that can be either a very punitive approach, or it can be, hey, the cop is there to help develop relationships and take a more restorative approach without necessarily calling it restorative practices, because again, it just depends on how tuned into restorative thinking a particular police department is. But I was given one high school to work with, and we spent time basically doing a 90-minute introduction to circle work with all of the 12th graders. We worked through the English class. So they had an exposure to circle work, but we didn't start getting a core group of people developed to be circle keepers or to hear cases until the 2nd semester, when we took over a civics class and dubbed it the restorative practice class. And these students were trained over the course of the first 3 weeks of class, 90-minute blocks every day, in restorative practices, and using circle work, using a talking piece, and running a circle. And we started getting referrals of other low-end types of disturbances, disorderly conducts within the school, getting up and walking out of class, using bad language, things that would, get a referral downstairs to the assistant principal. It might end up in a suspension, and we know just from anecdotal evidence at that school that suspensions went down. And this is just an extremely exciting, pregnant moment. Who knows how it will grow? We don't we're not sure how this is going to grow. But again, what we hope for, and what I fully expect is to see schools adopting restorative practices at two levels, both a community building level, so that it's, you can call it a prevention level, where you're helping strengthen the web of relationships in the classroom or in the building, so that there's less tension and fewer incidents. And then when there is an incident, you have the intervention circle, so that there's the young people are working on how to repair the harm, what needs to happen to move forward from this incident. And the same model that we used in the conferencing program in criminal cases will be used at the school level of getting people to share their stories, and what's the impact on everybody, how were you impacted, what needs to happen to move forward, what personal commitment are you going to make to help this move forward. A circle practice is a specific restorative justice practice of actually sitting in a circle without a table, and the key component is the use of a talking piece, which can be any item, but it's better if it's something of significance. And that item is passed from person to person, and when the person is holding the talking piece, he or she has the floor, so to speak. So this assures that everybody's voice is heard. People who tend to dominate a conversation, of course, get the opportunity to listen a little bit more, and people who are used to just sitting in the corner will have the opportunity to speak up. It creates a safe space. As I would wind down the 90-minute introduction of circle practice to students, I often would ask for a one-word, what did this feel like for you? So some of the answers that I recall are, it made me feel like the president. It made me feel like I was holding respect. I mean, those two things, especially the holding respect, where it just, whoa, I mean, that's cool. Young people get this concept right away. What's interesting and a challenge for adults is how much are they willing to allow young people to be empowered while divesting some of the control that they have and they need to have in a situation. So there's a balance there. But we know of many schools around not only this country but in other parts of the world where this has successfully occurred, and the result is better school community because the web of relationships is stronger, lower suspension rates because you'll see kids calling each other out for misbehavior because there's that stronger relationship, and because they've been through perhaps a circle where there's been a discussion of the impact of acting out. So it's, the kid acting out might feel like he or she's, getting points, but in reality, there'll be plenty of kids saying, I do want to listen to the Spanish teacher. I want to understand how to do this algebra problem, so cut it out. And you got to provide those people with the voice to be heard. It's like one of the young men who really took to this work at this Grady High School last year. He wanted to name the group the Unheard Voices because the process allows those unheard voices a space and creates a safe space to be heard. So that's really the core of the work. And that's why we, in looking at the different options available, ranging from peer mediation to peer jury, which is a phrase that's used a lot, which, again, the language, you could flip either way with a peer jury. It could be punitive to no end, and people could say, oh, but we're doing restorative practices, but the language, but just because it's something different. And it's true, you are giving over power, in a sense, from the assistant principal to a group of students. But if they're not trained in restorative practices and the restorative values, then you're replacing, one authoritarian person with a different set of authoritarianism. And I mean, there maybe is some benefit in having the younger people doing that, but in the long run, you're missing an opportunity for a real learning experience and a real sharing.